In the far reaches of the galaxy, among stars and planets that glimmered like scattered jewels, there was a story told in whispers. It was a story that traveled across systems, carried by traders, travelers, and historians who had pieced together fragments from old logs and fading records. They spoke of humans, creatures from a small blue planet called Earth. But over centuries, the humans had become more than real beings. They had become legends, a myth, a tale that parents told their children to inspire courage or warn them of dangers. Most civilizations dismissed the stories as exaggeration or folklore. How could a species from a planet so small, in a solar system that seemed insignificant, rise to challenge the vast empires of the galaxy? Many laughed at the idea. They imagined humans as brave but fragile, clever but limited, unlikely to survive even the harshest tests of nature. Yet the stories persisted. In the dim corridors of space stations and the quiet halls of alien academies, whispers continued. Humans were survivors unlike any other. It all began with the earliest records from Earth's history. Logs from old satellites, long-abandoned colonies, and messages sent into the void told of a species that never gave up. Humans faced disasters that would have ended any other civilization. They battled plagues, survived wars that destroyed cities, and endured environmental catastrophes that left their world scarred. Every time they were on the brink of extinction, they found a way forward. They rebuilt, reimagined, and sometimes reinvented themselves entirely. Historians of the galaxy studied these records with fascination. They saw patterns in human survival that no other species could match. Humans had a remarkable ability to adapt to changing environments, to invent tools and strategies when none seemed available, and to cooperate in ways that defied expectation. Some even suggested that humans had an unusual form of resilience built into their very biology, a kind of stubborn spark that kept them alive against impossible odds. But humans were more than survivors. They were explorers. From the earliest days, they had reached beyond their planet, sending probes, satellites, and eventually crews into space. Records showed daring missions to neighboring planets, some successful, some tragic, yet always pushing the limits of what was considered possible. And then there were hints of something greater. Rumors of humans venturing to other star systems circulated among the galaxy's scholars. These rumors were never confirmed, but they refused to disappear. On a distant planet called Thalor, a world known for its rich culture and advanced technology, humans were considered a legend in the truest sense. Scholars in Thalor's grand libraries spoke of humans as though they were ancient heroes, warriors of myth who had somehow survived the relentless tides of time. Traders from Thalor told stories of humans in their travels, describing them as clever, fierce, and unpredictable. They said that humans had a unique combination of courage and ingenuity, capable of turning the most hopeless situations into victories. Yet for all the admiration, there was also doubt. How could humans who had not been seen for centuries still be relevant? The galaxy had changed. Empires had risen and fallen. New species had advanced, discovering technologies that Earthlings might never have imagined. The human legend seemed like a relic from the past, a story that entertained but no longer carried truth. Still, the whispers never fully faded. The first signs that the legends might be more than stories came quietly. Sensors across the outer sectors of the galaxy detected anomalies, energy signatures that did not match any known civilization. At first, scientists thought they were natural phenomena, bursts of cosmic radiation, rogue planets passing through systems, or irregularities in star activity. But the patterns were too deliberate, too consistent to be random. Someone or something was moving with intent. Meanwhile, on Thalor, the Council of Leaders debated the old stories. They laughed about them, recalling the tales of humans who could supposedly command fleets of ships larger than any known in the galaxy. Some argued that these tales were propaganda, meant to inspire fear or awe. Others suggested that humans might have vanished long ago, leaving behind only myths. But a few voices insisted that there might still be humans somewhere, quietly observing the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to act. In the bustling cities of Thalor, people went about their daily lives, oblivious to the significance of what was coming. Children played in the streets, unaware of the legends their elders whispered about. Scientists analyzed star patterns, engineers repaired massive orbital stations, and traders prepared their ships for the next journey. Life moved with rhythm and routine, Yet beneath the surface a tension began to grow. Something in space was changing, something that would soon challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew. Back in the far reaches of space, humans had not been idle. Over centuries they had observed, learned, and prepared. Their planet, once considered a backwater, had become a center of innovation and strategy. Humans had built fleets capable of traveling vast distances, ships that could withstand the harshest environments, and systems that allowed them to coordinate across light years with precision. They had evolved from survivors into masters of adaptation, their every step calculated to ensure they were never again underestimated. The legends spoke not only of human strength, but of human character. Unlike many civilizations that relied on sheer force, humans were cunning, patient, and often unpredictable. They did not rush into battle blindly. They studied their opponents, learned their habits, and exploited weaknesses with creativity. This reputation had grown over centuries, carried in fragments across systems, until humans became more than a species. They became a symbol of possibility and fear combined. And yet, despite their capabilities, humans preferred observation. They did not announce themselves openly, allowing stories of their exploits to grow and mutate over time. Some historians suggested this was deliberate, a strategy to ensure that when humans finally revealed themselves, the galaxy would never underestimate them again. Others argued it was a quirk of their culture, a habit of patience and careful planning that had been ingrained through countless generations of survival. As the galaxy moved forward, the legend of humans persisted like a low hum, never fully fading. Traders mentioned them casually, often laughing at the idea of a species that had become myth. Soldiers told tales of human cunning in hushed tones, warning each other not to underestimate the impossible. Even in the halls of power, leaders were forced to consider the possibility that the old stories might not be mere myths. What if humans were real, and what if they were returning? On Thalor, the first hints of human presence appeared subtly. Sensors picked up a small disturbance in orbit, a movement that was deliberate yet unlike anything the local scientist had ever seen. At first it was dismissed as a sensor glitch, but as the readings continued, the unease grew. The council convened to discuss the possibility that the legend was coming to life. Panic mingled with curiosity. Could humans really be out there after all these centuries? And if so, what did it mean for the galaxy? The truth was simple. Humans had never been fully forgotten, and they had never been idle. They had watched, waited, and prepared, growing stronger and wiser with every passing century. The myths were rooted in reality, and the reality was approaching faster than anyone could imagine. Soon the galaxy would see that the stories of old were not exaggeration. They were warnings, lessons, and glimpses of a power that could no longer be ignored. For now, though, humans remained a legend in the minds of those who had never seen them. They were heroes of forgotten tales, warriors of impossible odds, survivors who had defied history itself. The galaxy whispered their name, half in admiration, half in fear, and in that quiet tension, the first stirrings of what was to come began to ripple through space, unnoticed by most but unstoppable in the making. It was only the beginning. For centuries, the people of the galaxy had spoken of humans as if they belonged to the realm of imagination, yet the first signs that the legends might be real appeared quietly, almost like a whisper in the dark of space. It started with anomalies in distant sectors, small disturbances that sensors could barely detect. At first, scientists dismissed them as errors or natural phenomena, but the patterns grew more consistent, more deliberate. Someone, or something, was moving with intention, and it was moving fast. On Thalor, the discovery sparked a mixture of curiosity and alarm. The planet was known for its advanced technology and disciplined leadership, yet the council could not dismiss the readings. Ships were approaching, thousands of them. The scale was unimaginable. Communications officers scrambled to analyze the data, comparing it with every known fleet in recorded history. Nothing matched. The energy signatures, the formations, the speed, it all pointed to something extraordinary. Something humans. No one on Thalor had ever seen a human fleet before. The idea had always been a story, a myth told to children and scholars alike. And yet the evidence was undeniable. The first ships appeared on the outer edges of orbit, their silhouettes catching the light of distant stars. They were massive, more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever encountered. They moved with precision, coordinated as though every vessel was part of a single organism. There was no hesitation, no disorder, Just a silent, relentless approach. The council convened immediately. Leaders from all corners of Thalor gathered, their expressions a mixture of awe and fear. The room was filled with murmurs and hurried discussions. Some could not believe what they were seeing. "It cannot be humans," one diplomat said, shaking his head. "They are extinct. They belong only to old stories." Others argued that perhaps the readings were from another civilization pretending to be humans. Yet the data told a story too precise to be false. These were humans, or at least they were something that only humans could produce. Outside the council chambers, citizens of Thalor began to notice changes in the skies. Sensors picked up distant flashes, ships moving in formation beyond the planet's orbital shields. Traders, travelers, and engineers paused in their routines, staring upward at something they could not fully comprehend. Rumors spread quickly. Some speculated that the humans had come for revenge. Others believed they had returned to reclaim lost glory. Fear and curiosity spread hand in hand. Meanwhile, aboard the fleet itself, humans moved with quiet efficiency. Every vessel had a purpose, every movement calculated. They did not rush or act impulsively. Communications flowed seamlessly between ships, each one aware of the other's position, trajectory, and intention. The sheer scale of the operation was staggering. Generations had been spent building this fleet, training crews, and preparing for a moment that would change the galaxy forever. The humans had not come unprepared. They had studied the galaxy for decades, observing the rise and fall of empires, noting the strengths and weaknesses of every major civilization. Their approach was deliberate, a combination of patience and strategy honed over centuries. They did not seek chaos or destruction, at least not yet. They sought recognition. They wanted the galaxy to know that the legends were real. On Thalor, panic began to grow among certain factions. Some argued for immediate military action, believing that the only way to survive was to strike first. Warships were readied, weapons powered, and defensive formations established. Others warned against rash action. They reminded the council that the humans of legend had always been resourceful, capable of turning any conflict to their advantage. To attack without understanding would be reckless. For days, the fleet remained on the edge of orbit, a silent presence that seemed to watch and wait. Sensors recorded the formations, analysts examined the patterns, and diplomats argued over possible intentions. The humans made no aggressive moves, yet their mere presence was enough to unsettle the galaxy. Every civilization that observed the fleet was forced to reconsider its assumptions. The humans were not extinct, they were not weak, and they were certainly not ordinary. Finally, the humans made their presence unmistakable. A single broadcast was sent to the major civilizations in the sector. It was simple, direct, and unmistakably human. "We are here. We have always been here. It is time to acknowledge the truth." The message was received with shock. Many had thought the human myth long dead, a story with no foundation in reality. Now the words came from the lips of the species itself, carried through space by technology that few could comprehend. The broadcast caused immediate debate. Some leaders accused the humans of bluffing, arguing that a species could not maintain such capability after centuries of isolation. Others cautioned patience, emphasizing that even legends could have grown from small truths. Yet for those who had studied the old records, the message struck a chord. The accounts of human survival, ingenuity, and courage were not exaggerated. They were warnings. And now the warnings had returned. As the hours passed, Thalor's leaders faced difficult decisions. Military strategy, diplomatic outreach, and survival planning consumed their thoughts. The humans did not act in haste, giving the council little choice but to negotiate or risk provoking a confrontation. Even in the absence of direct aggression, the sheer scale of the human fleet was enough to destabilize political calculations across multiple planets. What had once been a quiet, isolated sector now stood on the brink of historic change. Meanwhile, human crews maintained strict discipline. Every officer, pilot, and navigator understood their role in the larger mission. Decades of preparation had led to this moment. They were not there to conquer for the sake of power alone. They were there to assert presence, to demonstrate that their species had survived, evolved, and mastered the challenges of time and space. They moved with patience, confident that their reputation and capabilities would be recognized before any conflict became necessary. On Thalor, citizens began to experience a mixture of awe and fear. Children stared at the night sky, mesmerized by the silhouettes of massive ships and the glow of human technology. Scholars rushed to update records, trying to understand the scale of human advancement. Merchants worried about trade disruptions, while ordinary workers paused in their daily routines, knowing that the galaxy had changed in ways they could not yet comprehend. As the first human ships completed their initial maneuvers in orbit, the truth became impossible to ignore. The humans of legend were not stories. They were real. They were here. And they were more capable than anyone had imagined. The myths of survival, ingenuity, and courage were not mere tales. They were the foundation of a species that had thrived against impossible odds. The Council of Thalor knew that the next steps would define history. Every decision carried weight, for the humans were patient but unstoppable. They observed carefully, waiting for the right moment to act. And in their silence they taught the galaxy a lesson it had forgotten long ago. To underestimate humans was to court disaster. In the following days, the humans did not attack. They did not demand resources or immediate allegiance. Instead, they allowed the galaxy to witness their discipline, their coordination, and their precision. The presence of 10,000 ships in orbit became a symbol, not of fear alone, but of possibility. A species that had been dismissed as myth had returned, not with a roar, but with an undeniable, steady proof of power. As the story of their arrival spread, civilizations across the sector faced a choice. Some debated confrontation, others argued for negotiation, and many simply watched in silent awe. The humans had changed the rules without firing a single shot. They had proven that survival, intelligence, and patience could achieve what brute force alone never could. The galaxy had long ignored the legends, but now, the legends had arrived to write reality itself. By the end of this part of the story, one truth was clear. Humans were no longer the subjects of tales, they were the authors of history. And the galaxy, for the first time in centuries, began to realize that the myths of old were far more than stories. They were warnings, lessons, and glimpses of what a determined, united, and patient species could accomplish. And all of this was only the beginning.
The galaxy held its breath. The humans had arrived, and the thousands of ships in orbit were a constant reminder that the legends were real. Yet for all the awe and fear they inspired, the humans did not attack. They did not immediately demand submission or resources. Instead, they sent a message, a simple broadcast, clear and calm, that echoed across multiple star systems. "We seek a meeting of leaders," the message said. "We have observed your civilizations for centuries. It is time to speak. We are not here for war, but for recognition." The words spread quickly. Every planet, every fleet, every governing council in the surrounding systems received the message. Shock rippled across the galaxy. Never before had a species appeared with such overwhelming presence and then calmly requested dialogue. Many wondered why humans had returned after centuries of silence. Some believed it was arrogance. Others suspected a hidden strategy. One thing was certain: the humans were unlike any species anyone had ever faced. On Thalor, the council debated furiously. Some advisors pushed for immediate rejection of the human request. "We cannot trust them," one argued. "They command fleets we cannot match. If we meet them, we risk giving away our weaknesses." Others cautioned restraint. "Perhaps they do not intend to attack," another said. "Perhaps this is a chance to avoid unnecessary conflict. We must understand them before acting rashly." The debate lasted for hours, yet the humans waited patiently. Their fleet remained in orbit, perfectly aligned, sensors scanning the planet and surrounding systems. Not a single ship acted without purpose. Not a single order was given in haste. Their patience was a statement itself, a demonstration that they were confident in their power and secure in their intentions. Meanwhile, the galaxy watched. Historians and strategists pored over old records, trying to understand what the humans wanted. They studied every transmission, every story, every legend. They looked for patterns in human history, seeking clues to predict the next move. What they discovered was both inspiring and terrifying. Humans had a history of facing impossible odds, of turning adversity into opportunity. They were survivors, problem solvers, and planners. To underestimate them was to invite disaster. When the council finally agreed to meet the humans, preparations began immediately. The diplomatic chamber on Thalor was designed to impress, with large viewing windows that looked out into space and halls filled with symbols of power and culture. Delegates arrived from neighboring planets, bringing ambassadors, military strategists, and translators. Every precaution was taken to show respect while maintaining authority. No one wanted to appear weak, but no one wanted to provoke the humans either. Aboard the human fleet, the crews observed with quiet anticipation. Humans had prepared for this moment for generations. They were patient, disciplined, and confident. Their technology allowed them to monitor multiple systems simultaneously, to analyze signals and intentions in real time, and to coordinate actions across thousands of ships as if they were a single entity. The fleet was not merely a display of strength, it was a carefully orchestrated statement. The meeting began in a virtual space, a projection of Thaler's diplomatic chamber visible across the human fleet. Holographic representatives appeared in human form, calm and composed. Their presence was striking, yet there was no threat in their demeanor. Instead, they spoke with clarity and purpose. "We have observed your civilizations for centuries," one human representative began. "We have seen your successes and your failures. We have seen empires rise and fall. And we have seen how you treat myths, legends, and forgotten truths." The alien delegates listened in silence, trying to read meaning into every word. Some were skeptical, assuming diplomacy was a prelude to manipulation. Others could not help but feel a sense of awe. Here was a species that had been written off as extinct, now returning with fleets and technology that defied comprehension. They had waited, watched, and now they had come to speak. The humans continued. "We are not here to destroy. We are here to be recognized. For centuries, you have underestimated us. You have dismissed our history and ignored our capabilities. That time has ended. The galaxy must now acknowledge that humans are present, aware, and capable." A murmur went through the alien delegates. Some whispered to each other, questioning what it meant to recognize a species as humans demanded. Recognition, after all, was not a simple matter of protocol. It implied respect, acknowledgement of power, and an understanding that humans could influence the future of the galaxy in ways previously unimagined. The discussion grew more intense as diplomats debated how to respond. Military leaders suggested cautious strategies, plans to demonstrate strength without provoking hostility. Some suggested delays, hoping to buy time for analysis and preparation. Yet humans were patient. They did not push, they did not threaten. They allowed the delegates to speak, to debate, and to decide. Their presence alone was a reminder of capability. 10,000 ships in perfect formation, ready for anything, yet restrained. It became clear that the humans valued strategy over chaos. They did not need to attack to demonstrate power. They relied on discipline, intelligence, and the weight of history to make their point. This approach was unlike anything most civilizations had encountered. Many were accustomed to displays of force, to intimidation, to brute strength. Humans were different. They demonstrated control, patience, and confidence. Their actions spoke louder than weapons ever could. As negotiations continued, the humans presented evidence of their past achievements. They shared historical records, technological advancements, and examples of survival against impossible odds. They reminded the delegates that humans had endured catastrophes, wars, and planetary disasters that would have ended most civilizations. Yet they had survived, adapted, and grown stronger. This revelation forced alien civilizations to reconsider their assumptions. For centuries, humans had been myth, stories for children, legends for scholars, warnings for soldiers. Now those myths were reality. The humans were not just survivors. They were masters of adaptation and strategy. They had waited for the right moment to emerge, and that moment was now. The meeting also revealed something unexpected about human character. While humans were capable of overwhelming force, they preferred dialogue and understanding. They did not seek immediate conquest or domination. They were measured, deliberate, and purposeful. Their patience suggested confidence, not arrogance. Their strategy demonstrated foresight, not recklessness. They demanded recognition, but not fear. At least, not yet. For the delegates, this was both a relief and a challenge. They were facing a species that could destroy them if provoked, yet one that preferred negotiation over conflict. They had to balance caution with respect, skepticism with curiosity. Every word spoken in the virtual chamber carried weight, every gesture observed for hidden meaning. No civilization had ever encountered a species like this. Outside the diplomatic discussions, the galaxy reacted in real time. Citizens watched news transmissions of the human fleet, sharing speculation and wonder. Scholars analyzed every detail, writing reports and theories about human strategy and intent. Traders and travelers debated possible consequences for trade, security, and alliances. Even ordinary people going about their daily lives could sense that history was being rewritten before their eyes. And through it all, the humans remained calm. They did not interfere with daily life. They did not demand immediate tribute or control. They simply waited, letting their presence and their message resonate across space. It was a demonstration of power rooted not in aggression, but in patience, preparation, and confidence. By the end of this part of the story, one thing was clear. The humans had changed the rules. They had proven that legends could be real. They had demonstrated that patience, intelligence, and coordination could achieve what brute force alone never could. They had arrived not as conquerors, but as undeniable proof that history had been underestimated, and that the galaxy would never again doubt the capabilities of humanity. The challenge had been issued, silently yet unmistakably. The galaxy had to respond to acknowledge that humans were no longer a myth. Recognition was demanded, and it was now up to the civilizations of the galaxy to decide how they would meet this unprecedented force. The humans waited, confident in their abilities, prepared for any response, and ready to ensure that the legends of old were now undeniable reality. The story of the humans was no longer a tale whispered in the shadows. It had become the story of the present, the challenge of the moment, and the beginning of a new chapter in the history of the galaxy. And the challenge had only just begun.
The galaxy had been watching the human fleet for weeks. It was no longer just curiosity or fear. It was a question of understanding. How could a species that had long been thought extinct appear so suddenly, with such overwhelming strength and yet show restraint? The humans were no longer legends whispered in stories. They were real, and now it was time for the galaxy to learn the truth about them. On Thalor and neighboring planets, scientists, historians, and strategists worked day and night to piece together what they knew. They studied old Earth records, preserved texts, and the remnants of colonies humans had once established. They compared technological signatures, ship designs, and strategies recorded in distant archives. Slowly, a picture began to emerge, a story of survival, ingenuity, and unparalleled determination. The revelation stunned everyone. Humans had survived disasters that would have wiped out most civilizations, plagues that swept across entire continents, wars that destroyed cities, environmental catastrophes that reshaped their planet. They endured all. Every time they were pushed to the brink, they adapted. They rebuilt faster, stronger, and smarter. Their resilience was no accident. It was their defining feature. But survival was only the beginning. Humans had also mastered adaptation on a level no other species had achieved. They learned from their mistakes, studied other civilizations, and applied knowledge with precision. They developed technologies that seemed impossible to their neighbors. Ships that could travel faster than light, automated systems that could operate independently for years, and weapons that could be precise without being destructive. Their intelligence was not just academic. It was practical, creative, and often unpredictable. The humans did not reveal all of this at once. They let their presence speak for itself, letting the fleets orbit silently as the galaxy realized the scope of human capability. And yet, as the Council of Thalor continued to negotiate, humans shared more evidence of their history. They displayed records of planetary restoration after environmental collapse, accounts of survival during interstellar disasters, and proofs of technological innovations achieved under impossible circumstances. For many alien leaders, the revelation was humbling. They had assumed humans were weak, limited, and insignificant. They had treated humans as a minor species, a story for amusement rather than a real threat. Now all those assumptions were shattered. The humans had not only survived, they had thrived. They had evolved into a species capable of influencing the galaxy in ways that no one had predicted. Mar, historian from a distant system, described the revelation as a lesson in humility. Every planet had its own history of triumphs, yet none could compare to the humans' combination of endurance, intelligence, and creativity. They were not just survivors, they were strategists, engineers, diplomats, and warriors. They had learned to thrive in ways that others could not imagine, turning every challenge into an opportunity. The revelation also had a psychological effect. Citizens across multiple worlds began to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humans. Parents told their children that the legends were real. Scholars rewrote textbooks. Military strategists analyzed every recorded tactic humans had used in the past. It was no longer a story. It was a template for survival, innovation, and strategy. The humans themselves watched carefully as the galaxy reacted. They did not boast, threaten, or demand. Their confidence was silent but undeniable. They had waited for this moment, prepared for it, and now they allowed the galaxy to understand who they were and why they mattered. Their approach was deliberate. They did not need to demonstrate force to command respect. They already had it through proof of their resilience, intelligence, and discipline. For some leaders, the revelation created panic. They realized that the galaxy had underestimated humans for too long. They had assumed that humans were relics of history, incapable of shaping the future. Now they faced the reality of a species that could not only survive, but also outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast almost any other civilization. Plans that had seemed secure now felt fragile. Strategies that had been relied upon for generations suddenly appeared inadequate. Others felt awe. They saw the humans as a species to admire, to learn from, and perhaps even to ally with. Humans had proven that survival required more than power. It required intelligence, patience, and creativity. They had not rushed into conflict, yet the potential to dominate was undeniable. The revelation forced the galaxy to reconsider the meaning of strength and capability. The humans themselves had evolved beyond simple survival. They had mastered communication, collaboration, and leadership on a scale that few other species had attempted. Every ship in the fleet was part of a larger system, operating with precision and awareness. Human society had become adaptable, resilient, and cooperative in ways that allowed them to act as one without sacrificing individuality. Their strength was not just technological, it was cultural, social, and psychological. In the council chambers of Thalor, the human revelation sparked intense debate. Some leaders argued that negotiation was now essential, that they could not afford to ignore a species capable of such mastery. Others questioned whether recognition alone would be enough to prevent conflict, worrying that the humans might eventually use their strength for conquest. Every argument pointed back to the same conclusion. Humans were no longer a myth. They were real, and they had changed the galaxy's balance of power forever. Outside the council, ordinary citizens experienced the revelation differently. Traders paused shipments, wondering if alliances would shift. Families gathered to watch transmissions of human ships in orbit. Students studied the fleet and technology, inspired by the humans' achievements. People who had never considered the myth seriously were now forced to confront reality. The legends had come alive, and they demanded recognition, understanding, and respect. The humans did not force their presence. They allowed time for reflection, discussion, and analysis. Their patience demonstrated a confidence that went beyond technology or strategy. It was a confidence rooted in knowledge of their own history, in understanding of their capabilities, and in the certainty that their actions would speak louder than words. The revelation was complete. Humans were not simply back. They had returned as a force of intelligence, discipline, and enduring presence. In the following days, new stories began to circulate. Humans were described as patient, strategic, and composed. They were said to act with purpose, rarely making mistakes and always prepared for contingencies. Observers noted their ability to maintain calm under pressure, to coordinate massive fleets without confusion, and to make decisions based on evidence rather than impulse. Humans were no longer just survivors. They were architects of strategy and innovation. The revelation also brought questions. What were the humans' intentions? Would they seek alliance, trade, or dominance? Were their actions benevolent, or would they use their power to impose control? These questions sparked debates, theories, and planning across every planet that had observed the fleet. Governments realized that they could no longer ignore humans or treat them as minor players in galactic affairs. For the humans, the questions mattered less. They had returned to be seen, to be acknowledged, and to be understood. They had no need for immediate confrontation, no desire to provoke unnecessary conflict. Their presence, their preparation, and their history were proof enough. They had shown that humans were capable of facing any challenge, of thriving against impossible odds, and of commanding respect without resorting to violence. As the days turned into weeks, the galaxy began to accept the revelation. Humans were real. Humans were powerful. Humans were intelligent, adaptable, and capable of shaping the future. Legends had become fact. Myths had become reality. And every civilization now understood that the galaxy had underestimated a species that refused to be forgotten. For some, the revelation was frightening. For others, it was inspiring. But for all, it was undeniable. Humans had returned, not as stories whispered in the shadows, but as living proof of survival, ingenuity, and unmatched capability. And in the quiet moments, as fleets orbited silently and delegates debated strategy, one truth remained clear. The galaxy would never again underestimate humans, and this revelation was only the beginning. It would change politics, alliances, and perceptions forever. It would teach civilizations across the stars that survival, intelligence, and patience could outweigh brute strength. And it would set the stage for the next chapter in the story, a chapter in which the galaxy would have to confront the full reality of the humans it had once dismissed as mere legend. The revelation of humans' return had already shaken the galaxy, but the true test was only beginning. Leaders of multiple civilizations gathered to decide how to respond. The humans had not attacked, but their presence was undeniable. 10,000 ships hovered in orbit around key planets, silent yet imposing. Their fleet was a constant reminder that legends were real, and now it was up to the galaxy to make choices carefully. The Council of Thaler convened with unprecedented urgency. Leaders and strategists from neighboring systems joined the deliberations, their faces etched with worry and contemplation. Some insisted on immediate military action. "We cannot allow this species to dictate terms," one general argued, pounding his hand on the table. "They could wipe out fleets without effort. We must strike first while we still have a chance." Others pleaded for caution. "Strike first?" A diplomat countered. "Do you not see what they represent? They have survived impossible odds, mastered technology we barely understand, and yet they wait. They do not rush, they do not provoke. To attack would be reckless. We must negotiate." Debate raged for hours. Every possibility was examined. Every potential outcome weighed. Some argued that the humans' patience was a sign of confidence, a subtle warning that any misstep could be catastrophic. Others feared that hesitation could be interpreted as weakness. The council realized that any decision would have consequences for generations. Meanwhile, humans observed silently from orbit. They had no need to intervene, no need to rush. Their presence alone conveyed both power and patience. The humans had prepared for centuries for this moment. Their fleets were coordinated, disciplined, and equipped to respond to any eventuality. Every move they made or didn't make sent a message: underestimate them at your own risk. Outside the council, citizens watched with anxiety and fascination. Families gathered to follow news reports. Students discussed the humans' return in schools, and traders calculated the potential impact on commerce. Across worlds, conversations turned to speculation. What did the humans want? Were they seeking allies or asserting dominance? Could diplomacy succeed, or was conflict inevitable? As deliberations continued, a smaller group within the council proposed a balanced approach. They argued that diplomacy should be attempted first, but with clear contingencies for defense. "We must engage," one strategist said. "We cannot ignore them, and we cannot attack blindly. Let us show respect, prepare for negotiation, and remain ready for any outcome." The humans themselves seemed to anticipate this. They had returned not to conquer immediately, but to make the galaxy recognize their presence. Their strategy was deliberate, a combination of patience, intelligence, and strength. They understood the dynamics of fear and power, of perception and reality. They allowed the galaxy to wrestle with the question of how to respond, confident in their ability to handle any eventuality. Finally, after intense debate, the council reached a decision. Representatives would meet with the humans, acknowledging their presence and beginning dialogue. At the same time, military forces were prepared for contingencies, ready to act if provoked. It was a cautious compromise, a way to balance respect with caution, diplomacy with preparedness. When the meeting began, the humans were calm and composed. They did not display arrogance, yet every gesture conveyed authority. Their ships, perfectly aligned in orbit, served as a silent reminder of their capability. The human representatives spoke clearly, emphasizing that they sought recognition, not immediate conflict. They did not demand tribute, nor did they issue threats. Their goal was understanding, and their presence alone was enough to demand it. The delegates listened intently. The humans described their history, their survival through centuries of adversity, and their mastery of technology and strategy. They recounted the challenges their species had faced and the ways they had adapted and overcome. It became clear that humans had not only survived, they had thrived. Their achievements were not just technological. They were social, cultural, and strategic. Humans had learned to work as one while maintaining individuality, to innovate under pressure, and to act with foresight that few species could match. For many delegates, this was both humbling and frightening. They realized that the galaxy had misjudged humans for centuries. What had been dismissed as myth was a species capable of reshaping the balance of power. Humans could have acted aggressively, but instead they chose restraint, demonstrating confidence and control that few other civilizations could replicate. As dialogue continued, the humans presented their perspective on cooperation. They explained that they did not seek unnecessary conflict, but they demanded acknowledgement. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long, and now it was time to recognize their capabilities. Their approach was methodical, emphasizing patience, intelligence, and foresight. They were not conquerors, yet they were undeniably powerful. The revelation forced the Council to confront uncomfortable truths. Military strategies that had seemed effective now appeared inadequate. Diplomatic plans that relied on intimidation now seemed fragile. The humans were a species that could not be ignored, manipulated, or underestimated. Every decision carried weight. Every misstep could be catastrophic. Even with all this knowledge, the humans maintained a measured calm. They did not pressure the Council, did not raise demands aggressively, and did not act impulsively. Their patience was part of the challenge. They waited for the galaxy to recognize their reality voluntarily. They allowed time for reflection, debate, and understanding, confident that eventually the galaxy would make the right choice. Meanwhile, public opinion across multiple planets shifted dramatically. Citizens who had once dismissed humans as myths now debated their return. Students wrote essays, scholars updated textbooks, and citizens discussed the implications for trade, security, and diplomacy. Humans were no longer a distant legend. They were real, influential, and poised to affect every aspect of galactic life. The Council understood that this decision was not only political, it was historical. They were choosing how the galaxy would relate to a species that had survived impossible odds, mastered technology, and maintained patience across centuries. It was a decision that would define relationships, alliances, and strategies for generations. As the days passed, the Council finalized their approach. They would acknowledge the humans' presence officially, opening channels for negotiation and dialogue. At the same time, defensive preparations continued. Fleets were readied, weapon systems tested, and emergency protocols updated. It was a delicate balance of respect and caution, diplomacy and strategy. The humans, observing all of this, remained confident but patient. They did not interfere unnecessarily. Their fleets maintained perfect formation, their systems monitored activity across the sector, and their representatives engaged diplomatically without haste. They demonstrated that power did not always need to be displayed through aggression. Sometimes the presence of disciplined, intelligent, and capable beings was enough to command respect and shape decisions. Finally, the day of formal acknowledgement arrived. Delegates approached the humans' virtual meeting chamber with careful preparation. They brought representatives, historians, and military advisors ready to show respect while maintaining authority. The humans received them calmly, acknowledging their presence without displaying arrogance or hostility. The dialogue that followed was careful, deliberate, and respectful. Through this process, the galaxy began to understand the humans more fully. They were not just survivors, they were strategists, innovators, and visionaries. They had mastered patience, planning, and adaptation. They did not need to dominate to prove strength. They could command respect through intelligence, foresight, and calm authority. For civilizations across multiple systems, this was a revelation that reshaped how they thought about power and influence. By the end of this part of the story, one truth was undeniable. Humans had forced the galaxy to make a choice. They had proven that they were real, capable, and influential. They had demonstrated patience, strategy, and intelligence that few species could match. And most importantly, They had shown that recognition and respect could be commanded without a single act of unnecessary aggression. The decision made by the Council was cautious, deliberate, and wise. It acknowledged the humans' presence, respected their capabilities, and opened a path for dialogue and cooperation. At the same time, it preserved readiness, ensuring that the galaxy could respond to any threat if necessary. Humans had returned not as conquerors, but as undeniable forces of influence, patience, and intelligence. The galaxy had made its choice. Recognition was given, dialogue was opened, and the humans had achieved what centuries of myths and legends had promised. Their presence would now shape the future, influencing politics, alliances, and strategies across countless worlds, and the humans, patient as always, were ready for whatever came next. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy realized that legends were real, and that the reality of humans could not be ignored, challenged, or underestimated.
The acknowledgement of humans by the galaxy marked the beginning of a new era. For centuries, humans had been considered myths, stories told to entertain, frighten, or inspire. Now, they were no longer whispers in the dark. They were a living, undeniable presence, their fleets orbiting planets, their representatives engaging with councils, and their influence stretching across multiple star systems. The galaxy was awake to the truth, and the truth was powerful. For the people of Thalor and nearby worlds, life began to change almost immediately. Traders adjusted shipping routes, ensuring their fleets did not interfere with the massive human vessels. Scholars and historians pored over every detail, trying to understand the humans' strategy, technology, and history. Even ordinary citizens, who had once treated humans as fairy tales, now discussed them in daily conversations. Children asked questions about the stories they had once thought were fantasy, eager to learn about the species that had survived against impossible odds. The humans themselves did not seek to disrupt daily life. They maintained their fleet in orderly formation, their ships patrolling orbital paths without aggression. They established communication channels, making it possible for other civilizations to reach them, ask questions, and negotiate peacefully. Their approach was deliberate and methodical. They understood that their presence alone had changed the rules of engagement across the galaxy, and they chose to use it wisely. The Council of Thalor began to work closely with human representatives. Meetings that once might have been tense were now calm and focused. Humans listened carefully, asked questions thoughtfully, and provided insight based on centuries of observation and experience. They did not demand obedience. They did not make threats. Instead, they demonstrated how understanding, patience, and intelligence could accomplish what brute force never could. It became clear to every civilization that humans were not simply survivors. They were teachers, leaders, and innovators. Their long history of overcoming challenges had equipped them with a perspective few species could match. They could anticipate problems, identify solutions, and coordinate actions across vast distances. Their knowledge of strategy, technology, and diplomacy was profound, and it was becoming increasingly evident that any future conflicts or decisions in the galaxy would have to account for the humans' presence. Alliances began to shift. Some civilizations, previously rivals, now sought collaboration with humans. They realized that the humans' approach to strategy and diplomacy was not just effective, it was inspiring. For the first time in generations, leaders considered solutions based not on fear or dominance, but on partnership, understanding, and mutual respect. Humans demonstrated that influence could be earned through wisdom and preparation, not just power. Military leaders observed the humans' discipline with fascination. The coordination of 10,000 ships, each operating independently yet perfectly, synchronized, was a level of organization unmatched by any known fleet. They executed maneuvers with precision, monitored systems with attention to detail, and maintained readiness without creating panic. To many, it was clear that humans had mastered both technology and teamwork in ways the galaxy had never imagined. At the same time, humans shared insights into survival, adaptation, and problem-solving. Their history of facing catastrophic challenges became a guide for other civilizations. They shared lessons learned from planetary disasters, wars, and environmental collapse. They explained how societies could rebuild stronger after devastation, how technology could be applied to benefit populations rather than merely for conquest, and how strategic patience could often achieve more than immediate action. The impact on culture and education was profound. Schools across multiple planets incorporated lessons about humans, not as myths, but as a real living species whose history offered wisdom. Citizens discussed human approaches to innovation, cooperation, and resilience. Young people, once enamored with adventure stories, now dreamed of learning from humans, working alongside them, or even exploring space guided by the lessons the humans had left behind. At the same time, the humans' presence forced governments to reevaluate their strategies. Military plans were rewritten, diplomatic approaches reconsidered, and technological priorities reassessed. The galaxy now had to account for humans as a force that could not be ignored, not because they sought to dominate, but because they were undeniably capable, intelligent, and prepared for any scenario. Every civilization that had once underestimated humans had to acknowledge their reality. Despite all this, the humans remained calm and measured. They did not exploit fear. They did not demand loyalty. They allowed civilizations to adjust to their presence in their own time. Their restraint was a demonstration of control, patience, and understanding. They had shown that respect and recognition could be commanded through wisdom, preparation, and action, not through coercion or intimidation. Trade, diplomacy, and cooperation began to expand. Humans offered technological insights, sharing methods for energy production, faster than light travel, and planetary sustainability. They demonstrated how civilizations could collaborate without conflict, showing that intelligent strategy and coordination could benefit entire regions of space. For many, it was a revelation that cooperation could produce far more than competition or domination. At the same time, humans remained vigilant. They had not forgotten their own history. They knew the galaxy could be unpredictable, and they continued to monitor activity, maintain fleets, and plan for contingencies. Yet, unlike other species who relied on fear and immediate dominance, humans relied on foresight, intelligence, and diplomacy. They had learned over centuries that preparation and patience were far more powerful than reckless action. For ordinary citizens, the humans became symbols of hope and possibility. Children imagined exploring space alongside humans, learning their strategies, and understanding how they overcame impossible challenges. Citizens of all worlds began to see that legends could be real, that survival was not just about strength, but about intelligence, cooperation, and adaptability. Humans had become more than a species. They had become a model for what the galaxy could achieve when intelligence and patience guided action. Even rival empires began to cooperate in ways they had never imagined. The humans' presence forced them to reconsider old hostilities, to recognize that the balance of power had shifted. They realized that competition was no longer about overwhelming force alone. Strategy, adaptability, and foresight, the traits humans had demonstrated, were now central to survival and influence. The humans' quiet guidance and presence inspired a new era of diplomacy. Meetings that once would have erupted in tension now focused on discussion, negotiation, and long-term planning. Humans encouraged solutions that benefited multiple civilizations, showing that conflict was not the only path to influence. Their example reshaped politics, alliances, and strategies across countless worlds. Gradually, the galaxy began to settle into this new era. Humans were recognized as a permanent and influential presence. Their fleets remained in orbit, their representatives engaged in diplomacy, and their guidance shaped the development of technology, strategy, and society. They had not arrived to conquer, yet their influence was undeniable. Every civilization now accounted for humans in planning, strategy, and decision-making. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy experienced a moment of cautious optimism. The arrival of humans, once considered myths, had changed everything. Civilizations now saw that survival required more than power. It required intelligence, patience, cooperation, and strategic thinking. The humans had proven that legends could be real, that preparation could outweigh brute force, and that understanding could achieve what fear never could. And as the humans continued their careful observation and guidance, the galaxy began to understand that this was only the beginning. Their presence was not simply a demonstration of strength. It was an invitation to evolve, to cooperate, and to learn. Every world now faced the choice of embracing this new reality, recognizing the humans' wisdom, and adapting to the lessons they had left behind. The humans had returned, not to dominate, but to show that intelligence, patience, and resilience were the true measures of power. Their fleets, their history, and their diplomacy became a symbol of possibility. They were no longer myths whispered across the stars. They were a force that had reshaped the galaxy, teaching every civilization that the legends of the past could become the reality of the future. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Humans were real. Humans were capable. Humans had arrived. And in the quiet calm of space, their presence promised a new era, one defined not by fear, but by intelligence, cooperation, and the endless possibilities of a species that had survived the impossible and now shaped the galaxy's destiny.